After 7 years of building his empire, my husband gave my position to his mistress. It's just business, he smirked. He didn't know I was the anonymous investor funding his entire company. The next morning at 9 a.m., I clicked withdraw all. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just watched his world crumble. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into the story. Nothing personal, Meredith.
You understand, right?
It is just business. Those words hung in the recycled air of our living room, thick and suffocating like the smoke from a burning building. My husband, Greg Sterling, the CEO of Apex Dynamics, stood by the marble fireplace, adjusting his silk tie in the reflection of the mirror. He looked every bit the successful tycoon, a man who had built an empire from nothing. Or at least, that was the fairy tale he told the press. Standing next to him was Kylie. She was 23 years old, with hair the color of spun gold and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was wearing a dress that cost more than my first car, a dress I knew for a fact was purchased with a company credit card, and she was looking at me with a mixture of pity and triumph. "We need fresh energy," Greg continued, his voice smooth, practiced. It was the same tone he used when he was trying to close a deal with a hesitant client, a tone that used to make me feel safe, but now made my skin crawl. I feel that the Chief Strategy Officer position requires a modern touch. Kylie has some revolutionary ideas for our social media integration. We need to capture the Gen Z market, and frankly, Meredith, you don't speak that language. I stood there, my hands clasped tightly in front of me to hide the fact that they were trembling. Not from sadness, but from a cold, hard rage that was crystallizing in my chest like ice. I had been the acting chief strategy officer for 7 years. I had written the business plans at our kitchen table while nursing our daughter. I had stayed up until 3 in the morning correcting his emails because his grammar was atrocious. I had streamlined the operations that saved the company from bankruptcy twice. And I had done it all without a salary, officially listed as a consultant so that Greg could take the full salary cap for himself to maintain his image as a high earner. "So," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, cutting through the tension. "You are firing me? From the company we built? From the job I do for free?" Kylie stepped forward, placing a manicured hand on Greg's arm, marking her territory. "Oh, Meredith, don't think of it as being fired. Think of it as retirement. Greg says you have been looking tired lately. The wrinkles around your eyes are getting deeper. You should rest. Maybe take up gardening? My grandmother loves gardening. She says it gives her something to do while waiting for the end." The insult was so blatant, so sharp, it almost made me laugh. She was dismissing me to the pasture. She thought I was just the aging wife, the obstacle to be removed, so she could play executive in the corner office I had designed. She looked at the my living room, evaluating the furniture as if she were already planning the redecoration. Greg nodded, looking relieved that I wasn't screaming. He hated scenes.
Exactly.
Kylie understands the new market demographics. And honestly, Meredith, you are 46. The tech world is young. We need to look the part. Having you in client meetings sends the wrong message. It looks dated. He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe that I had bought him for our 10th anniversary using my inheritance money, though he told everyone he bought it with his bonus. "We're going out to celebrate the transition. Don't wait up for me." "Oh, and Meredith? Could you leave your key card on the table? Kylie needs it until we get hers printed." He didn't even apologize. He didn't offer a severance package. He just discarded 7 years of my work and 18 years of our marriage with the casual indifference of someone throwing away a used napkin. He asked for my key card to give to his mistress. The audacity was breathtaking. "One more thing," Greg added, pausing with his hand on the doorknob. "Since you have some free time now, maybe you can focus on the house. I noticed the pool boy has been slacking. And handle the dry cleaning, will you? I have a press conference on Tuesday." I watched the heavy oak door close. I heard the engine of his Porsche rev in the driveway, another toy funded by money he thought he had earned. Most women would have collapsed. Most women would have thrown a vase against the wall or called their mother sobbing. I wanted to. God knows, a part of me wanted to shatter every window in the house and scream until my throat bled. But I am a Holloway. And Holloways do not throw tantrums. We execute strategies. I walked to the window and watched the taillights of the Porsche fade into the darkness. He thought he was the king of the world. He thought Apex Dynamics was his creation, his kingdom. He had absolutely no idea that the ground he stood on, the chair he sat in, and the peril he was about to give to his mistress were all supported by a foundation that I controlled. He forgot one crucial detail. He forgot where the money came from. He forgot that before he was Greg Sterling, the CEO, he was Greg Sterling, the broke visionary with a maxed-out credit card and a dream that nobody else would fund. I turned away from the window and walked straight to my home office. The silence in the house was heavy, but inside my head, the gears were turning with terrifying precision. I sat down at my desk, the real command center of Apex Dynamics, and opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life, illuminating the room. I didn't log into the company portal. Instead, I inserted a secure RSA token into the USB port and logged into a private banking interface that Greg didn't even know existed. This wasn't the joint account he used to buy Kylie jewelry. This was the vault. The dashboard loaded. 14 accounts appeared on the screen. Orion Ventures, Phoenix Capital, Sterling Trust. To the outside world, these were independent institutional investors from Singapore, London, and New York. To Greg, they were the angels who believed in his genius. In reality, they were me. Every single one of them. 14 shell accounts, all funneling the Holloway family fortune into Greg's dreams.
My finger hovered over the mouse. I looked at the total balance. 58% of the company's operating capital. If I pulled this, the company wouldn't just stumble. It would cease to exist. It would be an extinction-level event. I took a deep breath. The air in the room felt electric. Nothing personal, Greg, I whispered to the empty room. It's just business. Before I tell you what happened when I clicked that button, I want to say a huge thank you for being here. It is not easy to share a story like this, to admit that you were blind for so long. If you are listening to this, please let me know in the comments which city you are tuning in from. Seeing your support from all over the world gives me the strength to relive this. I sat there, the blue light of the screen reflecting in my eyes. I wasn't just a scorned wife anymore. I was the majority shareholder. And the shareholder meeting was about to begin. To understand how I could destroy him with a single click, you have to understand how we built this. Or rather, how I built it, and he put his name on the door. You have to understand the history of the Holloway money and the secret I kept for 7 years to protect a man's fragile ego. 7 years ago, Greg was a different man. Or maybe he was the same man, and I was just wearing rose-colored glasses thick enough to blind me. He was ambitious, charismatic, and bursting with ideas for a logistics software company that would revolutionize the shipping industry. He had the vision, but he didn't have a dime. We were living in a cramped apartment, eating ramen noodles, and he was drowning in rejection letters from venture capital firms. I, on the other hand, am Meredith Holloway. If you are from Connecticut, that name might ring a bell. My family has been in banking and real estate since the railroads were built. We are what people call old money. We don't flash logos. We don't post our vacations on Instagram. We drive Volvos, we wear cashmere that is 10 years old, and we understand the power of compound interest. But I had kept the extent of my wealth hidden from Greg. He knew I was comfortable, but he didn't know I was Holloway rich. I wanted him to love me for me, not for the trust fund. When I finally decided to help him, I went to my mother, Beatrice Holloway. She was the matriarch of our family, a woman who could silence a boardroom with a single raised eyebrow. I remember the day I told her I wanted to invest in Greg's startup. We were sitting in the solarium of the family estate, the tea service set out on the table. The smell of lavender and old paper filled the air. Meredith, she had said, her voice sharp as a diamond cutter. If you give a man money directly, he will feel like an employee. If you give a husband money, he will eventually resent you for it. A man's ego is a fragile thing. If he builds a castle with your bricks, he will eventually lock you out of it. He needs to believe he hunted the bear himself, even if you loaded the gun. I argued with her. I told her Greg was different. I told her we were partners. But Beatrice Holloway didn't build the family fortune by being wrong. Fine, she said, setting down her teacup with a clink that sounded like a gavel. If you must do this, you will do it the Holloway way. We will set up blind trusts and shell companies. He will pitch his ideas to investors, and those investors will be your attorneys representing your capital. He will never know the money comes from you. Let him think he won the world on his own merit. It is the only way to protect your assets in the event of complications. At the time, I thought she was being cynical. I thought complications meant bankruptcy, not betrayal. But I agreed. So, we set it up. I created 14 distinct entities. Orion Ventures was registered in Delaware. Phoenix Capital had an address in London. The Sterling Trust looked like a family fund from the Midwest. I hired actors, literally, retired lawyers and business people, to sit in meetings with Greg, to grill him on his business plan, and then, after I gave the signal via text, to write him the check. I remember the night he came home after landing the Orion deal. It was raining, and he burst through the door, soaking wet but glowing with an inner fire. He picked me up and spun me around the kitchen, knocking over a chair in his excitement. They loved me, Meredith, he shouted, popping a bottle of cheap champagne. These are serious investors. Hard-nosed guys from New York. And I convinced them. I sold them the vision. I did it. I am so proud of you, I said, hugging him tight, feeling the thump of his heart against my chest. And I meant it. I was happy he was happy. I didn't need the credit. I just wanted his success. I wanted our family to be secure. I watched him drink that champagne, thinking I was the luckiest woman in the world to support a man with such passion. Over the years, as the company grew, so did the deception. Every time Apex Dynamics needed cash for expansion, for a new server farm, for hiring a new sales team, Greg would go out and pitch. And every time, I would sit in my office, review the numbers, and authorize the funds through one of my shells. I became the invisible architect of his life. While he was giving interviews to Forbes about his bootstrapping journey, I was in the background, managing the cash flow, ensuring the investors were happy, and actually doing the strategic work of the C-suite. I handled the legal compliance. I structured the employee benefit packages. I negotiated the contracts with vendors. Greg was the face, I was the brain. And the money? The money was all Holloway. But somewhere along the line, Greg started believing his own myth. He started believing that he really was the solitary genius the magazines wrote about. He forgot that I was the one staying up late to fix the accounting errors. He forgot that I was the one who coached him before every board meeting, writing his speeches, telling him when to pause for applause.
He started treating me less like a partner and more like an accessory. The shift was subtle at first. A dismissive comment here, a forgotten anniversary there. Then came the late nights at the office. The business trips to Singapore where his phone would be off for hours. I told myself it was the stress of the job. I told myself he was building this for us, for our daughter Kayla, for our future. I made excuses for him because I had invested so much, not just money, but my entire identity, into his success. But looking back, I realize I created a monster. I fed his ego with millions of dollars of unseen support, and it grew so big it decided it didn't need me anymore. I looked at the list of accounts on my screen again. Aurora Holdings, $4.2 million. BlackRock Front, $6.5 million. He had no idea. He thought these were ironclad contracts with institutional giants. He didn't know that every single contract had a specific clause, the Holloway contingency, buried in the fine print. A clause that allowed the investor to withdraw full funding immediately upon loss of confidence in leadership. My confidence hadn't just been lost. It had been murdered. And tomorrow, Greg was going to learn the most expensive lesson of his life. You never bite the hand that feeds you, especially when you don't even realize whose hand it is. The humiliation didn't start the night he fired me in our living room. That was just the finale. The overture began 6 months ago at the company's annual winter gala. That was the night I realized I was being erased from my own life, replaced pixel by a younger, brighter image. The gala was held at the St. Regis Hotel. It was a black-tie affair, intended to impress the shareholders and the media. I had spent weeks organizing the event, choosing the menu, the floral arrangements, the seating charts. I wanted everything to be perfect for Greg. I wanted him to shine. I wore a vintage Dior gown, a deep emerald green silk that belonged to my grandmother. It was elegant, timeless, and understated. I felt beautiful, powerful even. It was the kind of dress that commanded respect. Or so I thought. Greg was edgy in the limousine, constantly checking his phone, tapping out messages, and then quickly locking the screen when I looked over. When we entered the ballroom, he barely held my hand. He worked the room, shaking hands, flashing that million-dollar smile, while I trailed a step behind, the dutiful wife, holding his drink while he gestured. Then I saw her. Kylie. At the time, she was just an intern, or so I thought. A marketing assistant. She was wearing a red dress that was so tight it looked like it had been painted on her skin. It had a slit that went up to her hip and a neckline that plunged dangerously low. It was flashy, loud, and utterly inappropriate for a corporate event. But the men in the room were staring, mouths slightly open, and Greg was staring hardest of all. She walked over to us, holding a glass of red wine, her hips swaying with an exaggerated rhythm. "Mr. Sterling," she cooed, ignoring me completely. "The speech you gave last week was so inspiring. I just had to tell you. You have such a commanding presence." Greg beamed, puffing out his chest like a peacock. "Thank you, Kylie. That means a lot coming from the younger generation. We value fresh perspectives here. Meredith, this is Kylie, our new marketing intern." I extended my hand, smiling politely, trying to be the gracious executive wife. "Nice to meet you, Kylie. Welcome to Apex." She looked at my hand, then up at my face, her eyes scanning me like a barcode reader finding a defect. She didn't take my hand. Instead, she smiled a smile that was all teeth. "Oh, Mrs. Sterling. I didn't see you there. That dress is very historical. It reminds me of the heavy curtains in my grandmother's house. Very dust-resistant." Before I could respond to the backhanded compliment, she lurched forward. It happened in slow motion. She pretended to stumble on her 6-inch stiletto heel. The glass of red wine in her hand tilted, and the dark liquid splashed all over the front of my vintage Dior gown. The cold wetness soaked through the silk instantly. A collective gasp went through the nearby crowd. The beautiful emerald green turned almost black in a jagged, ugly stain right across my chest. "Oh my God!" Kylie shrieked, her hand covering her mouth in a gesture of mock horror that wouldn't have convinced a toddler. "I am so clumsy. I am so sorry. I just lost my balance." I stood there, the red stain spreading like a gunshot wound. I looked at Greg, waiting for him to defend me. I waited for him to scold the clumsy intern, to offer me his jacket, to help me to the restroom. Instead, he sighed. A loud, exasperated sigh that echoed in the silence. "Kylie, it's okay, it was an accident," he said, soothing her. He actually put a hand on her shoulder to comfort her. Then he turned to me, his eyes cold and annoyed. "Meredith, go clean yourself up. You look like a mess. You're embarrassing me." I felt the blood drain from my face. I was embarrassing him? "Greg," she threw wine on me, I whispered, shock making my voice tremble. "She did it on purpose." "Don't be dramatic," he snapped, loud enough for the CFO's wife to hear. She tripped. "Stop making a scene. Go upstairs and change, or just go home. I can't have you looking like a disaster when the photographers get here." The investors want to see success, not a laundry accident. Kylie was smirking behind her hand. She grabbed a napkin and dabbed at Greg's lapel, which didn't even have a drop on it. I'm so sorry, Greg. Let me help you. You poor thing. I looked around the circle of people. Some of the other wives looked down, embarrassed for me. Others looked away. I was the CEO's wife, the woman who had funded the party, and I was being banished like a naughty child. I walked out of that ballroom with my head held high, refusing to let them see me cry. But inside, something shattered. The walk to the elevator felt like a mile. I could feel their eyes on my back. I could hear the whispers starting before the elevator doors even closed. I didn't go to a room to change. I called the driver and went home alone. I sat in the dark in our living room, still wearing the ruined dress, the wine drying into a stiff, sticky crust. That was the night the suspicion took root. But suspicion is a ghostly thing. It haunts you, but you can't hold it in your court of law. I needed proof.
And Greg, in his arrogance, began to get careless after that night. He started bringing her to meetings. He started quoting her ideas at dinner, ideas that were shallow buzzwords lifted from TikTok. Kylie thinks we should pivot to Gen Z, he would say while cutting his steak. Kylie says traditional strategy is dead. He was devaluing me piece by piece. He stopped asking for my advice. He moved my desk at the office further away from his, eventually putting me in a shared space with the junior analysts while Kylie got the office next to his. It's just temporary, he had lied. We're restructuring. You understand. The other employees saw it. I saw the pity in the eyes of the older staff, the secretaries who had been there since the beginning. They knew who really ran the office. They knew who remembered their birthdays and approved their sick leave. They saw the queen being pushed off the throne by the court jester. But no one said a word. Because Greg was the CEO. He signed the checks. Or so they thought. I sat in my home office, rubbing the spot on my chest where the wine had hit me 6 months ago. That stain never came out of the dress. And the stain of his betrayal wasn't going to wash out either. It was time to stop being the victim. It was time to become the investigator. After the gala, I didn't scream. I didn't confront him. I did what a Holloway does. I audited him. I stopped being a wife and started being a forensic accountant. I had access to the household accounts, obviously, but Greg had always been secretive about the company discretionary funds. He claimed they were for client entertainment and business development. He claimed these accounts were off limits even to me because of client confidentiality. What he didn't know is that as the administrator of the investor shell companies, I had the right to audit the books of Apex Dynamics at any time. It was a clause in the investment agreements, standard due diligence. He had signed those papers years ago without reading the fine print, too eager to get the check. I hired a private investigator, a man named Mr. Vance, no relation to Kylie, thank God, who specialized in corporate fraud and infidelity. But honestly, I didn't need him to find the money. I just needed him to take the pictures. I could follow the paper trail myself. One Tuesday morning, while Greg was supposedly at a leadership retreat in Aspen, I logged into the Apex Financial server using a backdoor admin key I had created years ago. The house was quiet. The only sound was the humming of the refrigerator and the furious clicking of my mouse. I started pulling the expense reports. The first thing I found was the consulting fees. Over the last 6 months, a company called Kilovolt Creative Solutions had billed Apex Dynamics for $15,000 a month. I looked up the registration for Kilovolt Creative. It was registered to a residential address. An apartment in the city. I cross-referenced the address. It was a luxury penthouse in the downtown district. Rent, $8,500 a month. Paid for by Apex Dynamics under corporate housing. My stomach churned. We didn't have any corporate housing. We didn't have any out-of-town executives who needed a penthouse. That apartment was for her. He was keeping her there. Then I looked at the credit card statements for the company Amex, the one meant for travel and client dinners. Tiffany & Co., $4,200. Item, diamond pendant. The Four Seasons, Maui, $12,000. Greg had told me he was at a conference in Seattle that week. He sent me a picture of rain against a window. He must have downloaded it from Google. Porsche leasing, $2,100 per month. He had leased a white Porsche Macan. I had seen Kylie driving a white Porsche on her Instagram. I checked the license plate in the photo she posted with the caption #bossbabe #selfmade. It matched the leasing agreement on my screen. Self-made, I scoffed, taking a screenshot. Honey, you are husband-made. But the most insulting charge wasn't the car or the jewelry. It was the small things. The petty thefts that showed just how little respect he had for the company we built. Victoria's Secret, $400. Sephora, $650. Lululemon, $300. He was categorizing these as office supplies. I stared at the screen, feeling a wave of nausea. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was stealing. He was embezzling money from the company, my family's money, to fund his lifestyle with a girl who was young enough to be his daughter. He was legally exposing the company to tax fraud. If the IRS saw lingerie listed as office supplies, they would tear Apex apart. He was risking everything, the employees' jobs, the company's reputation, our daughter's future, just to impress a girl who probably couldn't spell fiduciary. Then I found something that made my blood freeze. A charge for $500 to Goldman Family Law. A divorce attorney. The date on the charge was 3 months ago. He had been planning this. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision to promote Kylie. He had been consulting a lawyer to see how much he could take from me in a divorce. He was planning to blindside me, take half the assets, and ride off into the sunset with his mistress. Suddenly, I heard the front door open. My heart slammed against my ribs. Greg wasn't supposed to be back from Aspen until tomorrow. Meredith? You home? His voice echoed from the foyer. I slammed the laptop shut, pulling the RSA token out with trembling fingers. I shoved the papers into a drawer just as the office door opened. Greg stood there, holding his travel bag. He looked tanned. There was no snow in his tan. Aspen, my foot. Hey, he said, looking suspicious. What are you doing in here with the door closed? Just paying bills, I lied, standing up and trying to block his view of the desk. You're back early. Wrapped up the retreat early, he said, dropping his bag. Productive trip. Very intense. I bet, I said, smelling the faint scent of Kylie's vanilla perfume on his jacket. He didn't notice my sarcasm. He was too full of himself. But I knew. I had the evidence. 2 days later, Mr. Vance, the investigator, came back with the visual confirmation. He met me in a park, away from the house. He handed me a manila envelope. It's pretty standard, Mrs. Sterling, he said, his voice devoid of emotion. Dinners, hotels. Public displays of affection. They aren't hiding it very well. I opened the envelope. There were photos of them at a cafe, Greg feeding her a pastry. Photos of them kissing in the park. And a photo of them leaving a medical building. My blood ran cold. I looked closer at the sign on the building. Center for Reproductive Health. A fertility clinic? They were only there for an hour, Mr. Vance said, seeing my expression. Might be a consultation.
A baby. He was planning a new family. He wasn't just having a fling. He was replacing us. He was building a replica of his life, just with a newer model of wife. He wanted a do-over with someone who worshipped him, someone who didn't know he was a fraud. I put the photos back in the envelope. My hands were shaking, but not from grief anymore. The grief had burned away, leaving only cold, hard calculation. I looked at the calendar on my phone. The board meeting where he planned to promote her was in 3 days. He was going to make it official. He was going to bring her into the inner circle, give her power, give her a title that I had earned with sweat and tears. I needed to protect myself. But more importantly, I needed to protect Kayla. If he was planning a new baby with Kylie, where did that leave our daughter? I spent the next 2 nights reviewing the bylaws of the shell companies. I read the fine print of the Holloway contingency over and over until I had it memorized. Clause 4.2, immediate withdrawal. The investor reserves the right to recall all principal and interest immediately upon evidence of malfeasance, misappropriation of funds, or breach of moral turpitude by the CEO. Embezzlement was malfeasance. Adultery with a subordinate funded by company money was a breach of moral turpitude. I had him on every single count, but I didn't want to just sue him. Litigation takes years. Lawyers get rich, and you get gray hair. I wanted justice. And justice, in the world of business, is swift and brutal. I closed the folder. The forensic trail was complete. I knew where every dollar had gone. And I knew exactly how to call every dollar back home. If there was any hesitation left in my heart, any tiny, lingering fragment of love for the man I had married, it died the afternoon Kayla came home from school in tears. Kayla is 12. It is a difficult age. You are not a little kid anymore, but you aren't a teenager yet. You are sensitive, observant, and everything hurts. She worshipped her father. To her, Greg was Superman. He was the busy, important hero who bought her nice gifts even if he missed her soccer games. She kept a picture of him on her nightstand. That afternoon, I was in the kitchen reviewing the withdrawal schedules, a cup of cold coffee beside me, when the front door slammed with a violence that shook the house. "Kayla?" I called out. She ran past the kitchen, her backpack thumping against the wall, sobbing. I heard her footsteps pounding up the stairs, then her bedroom door slam. I dropped my pen and ran up the stairs. "Kayla, honey? Open the door." I heard muffled crying from inside. "Go away. I hate him. I hate everyone. Sweetheart, please. Tell me what happened. Did someone say something mean at school?" The door clicked open. Kayla stood there, her face blotchy and red, her eyes swollen. She looked so small, so broken. Her school uniform was rumpled. "Dad picked me up," she hiccuped. "Okay," I said, stepping inside and sitting on her bed. "That's good, right? Usually the nanny picked her up or I did. Greg hadn't picked her up from school in 2 years. He brought her." Kayla spat the word out. "That lady. Kylie." My spine stiffened. "He brought Kylie to pick you up from school?" Kayla nodded, wiping her nose on her sleeve. She sat in the front seat. "Dad made me sit in the back. He said the front seat is for grown-ups." She kept turning around and looking at me like I was a puppy she didn't want. I pulled my daughter into my arms, stroking her hair. "What did she say to you, baby?" Kayla took a shaky breath. "She asked me if I liked my room. I said yes. And she laughed. She said, 'Well, enjoy it while you can. When your dad and I get the new house, you're going to have a much smaller room because we need space for the nursery.'" The world stopped spinning. The air left the room. Nursery. The fertility clinic photos flashed in my mind. It was true. They were planning a baby. And they were planning to push my daughter aside to make room for it. She said. Kayla's voice trembled. She said she's going to be my bonus mom. She said you were going on a long vacation soon, and that she would take me shopping to buy clothes that aren't so frumpy. She told me to call her Kylie, not Miss Vance. She said I needed to be cooler if I wanted to hang out with them. "And Dad?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "What did Dad say?" "He just laughed," Kayla sobbed, burying her face in my chest. "He told me to be polite. He said Kylie was just trying to bond with me. He said I was being difficult." "Mom, is it true? Are you going away? Is she going to live with us?" Dad said they're looking at a house in the Hamptons. I held my daughter tighter, rocking her back and forth. A fire ignited in my belly, a primal, ancient rage that eclipsed anything I had felt about the money or the infidelity. He had exposed our daughter to his mistress. He had let that woman taunt my child, threaten her security, and insult her mother. He had sat there and laughed while his girlfriend traumatized his daughter. He had prioritized his libido over his child's mental health. He had crossed the line. He had broken the sacred contract of parenthood. "Listen to me, Kayla," I said, pulling back to look her in the eyes. I wiped the tears from her cheeks with my thumbs. "Look at me." She looked up, her eyes wide and fearful. "I am not going anywhere," I said, my voice steady and hard as steel. "I am your mother. Nobody replaces me. Ever. And you are never, ever going to have to ride in a car with that woman again. Do you understand?" "But Dad said." "Dad is confused," I said. "But I am going to fix it. I promise you. I am going to fix everything. Nobody kicks us out of our home. Nobody tells you what to wear. And nobody treats you like a second-class citizen in your own family." "Are you going to divorce Dad?" she asked, her voice small. "I am going to do what is best for us," I said. "Do you trust me?" She nodded. "Good. Now wash your face. We're going out." "Where?" "We're going to get ice cream. And then we're going to call Aunt Janet." I stayed with her until she calmed down. I watched her face, the innocent curve of her cheek, and I made a silent vow.
Greg thought he was building a new life. He thought he could just swap us out like upgrading a phone plan. He thought he could use the money I provided to build a nursery for his affair baby while shoving my daughter into the corner. He thought I was weak because I had been quiet. He had absolutely no idea who he was dealing with. He saw a housewife. He didn't see the lioness. He didn't know that a mother protecting her child is the most dangerous force in nature. I walked back downstairs to my office. The hesitation was gone. The guilt was gone. I wasn't just protecting my assets anymore. I was protecting my cub. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Janet?" I said when my sister answered. "Meredith?" She sounded surprised. Janet was a shark of a corporate lawyer in Manhattan, known as the Barracuda by her rivals. We hadn't been close lately, mostly because she hated Greg. She had called him a parasite at our wedding. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said. "You were right. About everything. He's cheating. He's embezzling. And he just threatened Kayla's future." "Where is he?" Janet asked instantly, her voice sharpening like a blade. "Do I need to bring a shovel or a subpoena?" "He's dug his own grave," I said. "I just need you to help me bury him in it. I want to activate the Holloway contingency. All of it. I want to strip him bare." There was a pause on the line. Then, I heard the sound of a chair scraping back and a lighter flicking on. "I'll be there in 2 hours," Janet said. "Bring the wine. The good stuff. We have work to do." "And Meredith?" "Yes. Welcome back to the family." Before the final blow, there was one small battle. A skirmish that gave me a taste of the victory to come. It was petty, perhaps, but after seeing Kayla cry, I wanted blood. I wanted to remind Greg of the hierarchy he had forgotten. The day after Kayla's breakdown, I decided she needed a distraction. I took her out of school early, something I never did, and drove her to the upscale shopping district in Greenwich. "We are going shopping," I told her. "Real shopping. Not for what you need, but for what you want." We walked into Lucia's, the most exclusive boutique on the avenue. It was the kind of place where they lock the door behind you and offer you sparkling water with lemon slices. The air smelled of expensive leather and entitlement. Kayla was looking at a leather jacket, her eyes lighting up for the first time in days. "It's cool, Mom," she whispered. "But it's expensive. Dad said money is tight right now because of the expansion." "Dad lies," I said simply. "Get it. Get the boots too." Get whatever you want. As we were walking toward the dressing room, the bell above the door chimed. I froze. I knew that laugh. It was high-pitched, grating, and fake. Kylie walked in, hanging onto Greg's arm like a cheap purse. They didn't see us at first. Greg was on his phone, of course, and Kylie was pointing at a display of limited edition handbags. Oh, Greggy, look. That's the Birkin I showed you. You promised, she squealed. It matches the car. Greg looked up from his phone, looking annoyed but resigned. Okay, babe. Whatever you want. Just make it quick, I have a call in 10 minutes. Kayla stiffened beside me. She gripped my hand so hard her knuckles turned white. She tried to hide behind a rack of coats. I squeezed her hand back. No, I whispered. We don't hide. Stay here. Watch this. I stepped out from behind the clothing rack, right into their path. Hello, Greg. Kylie. Greg jumped like he had been tasered. He dropped his phone. It clattered onto the hardwood floor. Kylie's eyes went wide, then narrowed into a sneer when she saw it was me. Meredith, Greg stammered, his face turning a shade of red that matched Kylie's lipstick. What are you doing here? Shopping with our daughter, I said calmly, gesturing to Kayla, who stepped out looking brave but terrified. You remember her, right? The one you shoved in the back seat yesterday? Greg flinched. He looked at Kayla, guilt flashing across his face for a millisecond before he masked it with annoyance. Now, Meredith, let's not make a scene. We were just spending company money on handbags? I asked, glancing at the Birkin Kylie was clutching. Kylie recovered her composure. She stepped forward, flipping her hair. We're just here to pick up a little something. Greggy is treating me. She looked at the clothes in my arms. Are you sure those fit, Meredith? That brand runs a little slim. And leather is a bold choice for your age. The sales associate, a woman named Eloise who had known my mother for 30 years, stood behind the counter, watching with wide eyes. Eloise knew exactly who paid the bills in the Holloway family. I smiled at Kylie. A slow, predatory smile. Actually, Kylie, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to show Kayla something about economics. I walked over to the counter where the Birkin bag Kylie wanted was displayed. It was beautiful. Crocodile skin. $25,000. Eloise, I said to the sales associate. I'll take this bag. Kylie gasped. She clutched Greg's arm. Hey! I saw it first. Greg, tell her. You promised me. Greg looked between us, sweating. He was trapped. Meredith, be reasonable. Kylie really wanted that bag. You don't even like crocodile. I don't, I agreed. But I like taking things you think are yours. Greg. Kylie whined. Do something. Meredith, Greg warned, lowering his voice. Don't embarrass me. Let her have the bag. Did she earn it? I asked. Or is this another office supply expense? Well, Greg, you can buy it for her. Oh, wait. The company credit card is maxed out for the month, isn't it? I saw the statement. All those trips to Aspen really add up. Greg turned pale. He hissed, Meredith, shut up. Not here. I'll take the bag, I repeated to Eloise. And the jacket. And the boots. And, actually, I'll take that entire display of silk scarves. I pulled out my wallet. But I didn't pull out the joint credit card Greg and I shared, the one linked to his salary. I pulled out the black Centurion card. The heavy, titanium card that bore the name Holloway Trust. It was a card Greg had never been approved for. A card that had no limit. A card that whispered old money louder than any logo. Charge it, I said. Eloise smirked. She took the card. Certainly, Ms. Holloway. Kylie stared at the card, then at Greg. Why doesn't she use your card? What does that card say? Holloway?
Greg couldn't answer. He knew he couldn't afford that bag on his personal limit. He relied on the company card for everything, and he knew I knew it. He looked at the card with envy. He had always wanted one. Sorry, Kylie, I said, taking the bag from Eloise. It looks like this one is taken. But I'm sure there's a sale rack at the mall across town. That seems more your speed. I handed the bag to Kayla. Happy early birthday, sweetie. You can use it for your books. We walked out of the store, leaving Greg red-faced and Kylie stomping her foot like a petulant child. I heard her shrieking as the door closed. You let her talk to me like that? As we got into the car, Kayla looked at me with awe. Her fear was gone, replaced by admiration. Mom, that was awesome. Did you see his face? That was just a warm-up, I said, starting the engine. Now let's go see Aunt Janet. We have a war to plan. The Holloway estate in Connecticut is less of a house and more of a fortress. Stone walls, iron gates, and an atmosphere that screams, we survive everything. It sits on 50 acres of manicured woodland, a testament to generations of shrewd investments and ruthless protection of capital. When I pulled up the driveway, Janet's Jaguar was already there, parked aggressively on the gravel. My mother, Beatrice, was waiting on the porch, leaning on her cane like it was a scepter. She was 70, but she looked like she could still wrestle a bear and win. We sent Kayla to the media room with a new puppy and a bowl of popcorn. This was adult business. We sat in the library, the same room where I had foolishly argued for Greg's funding 7 years ago. The room smelled of old leather, whiskey, and vengeance. This time, the mood was different. There was no tea. There was a bottle of vintage scotch and stacks of legal documents covering the mahogany table. Janet, wearing her power suit and reading glasses, looked up from a file. You have been busy, Meredith. This paper trail is extensive. He made it easy, I said, pouring myself a drink. My hands were steady. He's arrogant. He thinks nobody checks the books because he's the visionary. Embezzlement, tax fraud, misuse of funds. Janet listed off, flipping through the printouts I had brought. We could send him to jail, just with this. The IRS alone would bury him for 10 years. I don't just want him in jail, I said, taking a sip of the scotch. It burned, grounding me. I want him to know who did it. I want him to feel the floor drop out from under him. I want to see the look on his face when he realizes he's nothing without me. Beatrice spoke up from her armchair. The company, Apex Dynamics. Is it salvageable? The product is good, I said. The staff is loyal. The engineers are brilliant. The only cancer is the leadership. If we cut out Greg and Kylie, the body will survive. In fact, it will thrive. Good, Beatrice said. Then we execute the 1929 clause. She pointed to the yellow document on the table. The original trust agreement my grandfather had written after the Great Depression. The 1929 clause. It was a fail-safe designed to prevent the family fortune from being squandered by incompetent heirs or their spouses. It allowed the trust to recall loans immediately if the recipient engaged in conduct detrimental to the reputation or financial stability of the trust. The 14 shell companies, Janet explained, tapping her laptop. I have drafted 14 separate demand letters. Each one cites the Holloway contingency. Because Greg signed these contracts thinking they were independent investors, he didn't realize the contingency language was identical in all of them. He signed his own death warrant 14 times. He never reads the fine print, I said. He just looks for the signature line. When do we strike? Janet asked, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Tomorrow, I said. The board meeting is at 10 a.m. He plans to announce Kylie's promotion and my retirement. He wants to do it publicly, to humiliate me in front of his shareholders. I want the money gone before he even steps into the room. If you withdraw 58% of the operating capital all at once, Janet warned, the bank's fraud algorithms might freeze the transaction. It will look like a cyber attack. We need to be smart. I know, I said. We stagger them. Starting at 9 a.m. One account every minute. By 9:15 a.m., the company will be insolvent. The automated alerts will start hitting his phone around 9:05. And the SEC? Beatrice asked. I have the report ready, I said. Anonymous whistleblower complaint. Attached evidence of him using company funds for personal luxury goods. The handbags, the penthouse, the car. Once the money is gone, the SEC freezes the stock. He won't be able to sell. He won't be able to run. He will be trapped in a burning building with no exits. Beatrice nodded slowly. A rare smile touched her lips. You finally learned, Meredith. It took you 7 years, but you finally learned. Never let a man hold the purse strings. I'm sorry, Mother, I said quietly. I should have listened. Water under the bridge, she said. Now, go get some sleep. You have an empire to reclaim. And, Meredith? Wear the white suit tomorrow. The one you wore when you graduated from Wharton. It sends a message. What message? That the mourning period is over. The executioner has arrived. I drove home that night with the demand letters on a USB drive in my purse. Greg was already asleep when I got in. He was snoring, blissfully unaware that the roof was about to cave in on him. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Kylie with a heart emoji. I lay down next to him for the last time. I looked at his face in the moonlight. He looked peaceful. He looked like the man I had loved, the man I had built a life with. But that man was dead. The man sleeping next to me was a thief, a liar and a fool. I closed my eyes and visualized the clock hitting 9 a.m. Tick, tock. The countdown had begun. The next morning, the day of the board meeting, I woke up before the alarm. Greg was already up, whistling in the shower. He was in a fantastic mood. Why wouldn't he be? Today was his coronation. Today he would officially replace his aging wife with his trophy mistress. I slipped out of bed and went downstairs to make coffee. But I wasn't just making coffee. I had one last meeting before the fireworks began. I texted Robert, the CFO of Apex Dynamics.
Meet me at the park bench on 4th and Elm. 7:30 a.m. Come alone. If you don't, I send the IRS file. Robert was a weak man. A numbers man who liked his comfortable salary and his golf club membership. He had seen the embezzlement. He had signed off on the consulting fees for Kylie. He knew. And because he knew and did nothing, he was complicit. I sat on the park bench, clutching my coffee, watching the morning joggers. At 7:28 a.m., Robert appeared. He looked pale, sweating despite the cool morning air. He wore a tracksuit, trying to blend in, but his nervousness radiated off him like heat. Meredith, he said, sitting at the far end of the bench. What is this about? Greg will kill me if he knows I'm talking to you. Greg is a dead man walking, Robert, I said calmly. He just doesn't know it yet. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered. I pulled a manila envelope out of my bag. This is a copy of the whistleblower report I am sending to the SEC at noon today. It details the $400,000 in misappropriated funds over the last year. The apartment. The car. The jewelry. And here, I pointed to a highlighted section, is your signature approving every single expense? Robert turned a shade of green. He made me. He said it was business development. I have a mortgage, Meredith. I have 2 kids in college. I know, I said. And that is why I am giving you a lifeboat. He looked at me, hope warring with fear. What do you mean? I own the company, Robert, I said. What? No, Greg owns 20%, the investors own. I am the investors, I cut him off. Orion, Phoenix, Sterling Trust. It's all me. It's all Holloway money. Robert's mouth fell open. He did the math in his head instantly. My God. 58%. Exactly. And at 9 a.m., I am pulling it all. The company will crash. Greg will be removed. And the SEC will come knocking. Robert put his head in his hands. I'm going to jail. Not necessarily, I said. I need a witness. I need someone to stand up in that board meeting today and confirm that the accounts are empty. I need someone to confirm that Greg ordered these payments over your objection. If you testify against him, if you help me transition the leadership, I will ensure your severance package is protected, and I will speak to the DA about your cooperation. You might lose your license, but you won't lose your freedom. He looked at me, tears in his eyes. He's my friend, Meredith. He's stealing from you too, Robert, I said. He's risking your pension for his mistress. Is that a friend? Robert took a deep breath. He looked at the envelope, then at me. He saw the steel in my eyes. He realized the power had shifted. What do you want me to do? He asked. Go to the meeting, I said. When I walk in, you back me up. When I say the money is gone, you confirm it. And when the board asks for a vote on his removal, you raise your hand first. He nodded slowly. Okay. I'll do it. Good choice, Robert. I left him on the bench and drove back home. Greg was just leaving. He looked dashing in his navy suit, the one I had picked out for him. Hey, he called out as he got into the car. Where were you? I wanted to say goodbye. Wish me luck. Good luck, Greg, I said, standing in the driveway. You're going to need it. See you at the retirement party, he laughed, revving the engine. I watched him drive away. The ignorance was almost tragic. I went inside and went straight to my closet. I pushed past the sensible dresses, the mom clothes. I reached to the back and pulled out the white suit my mother had mentioned. It was sharp, tailored, and immaculate. I put it on. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a tired wife. I looked like a CEO. I checked the time. 8:45 a.m. I went to my office and sat down at the command center. I opened the banking interface. The 14 accounts were lined up like soldiers waiting for orders. Kayla came into the room, holding her new backpack. Mom? Are you okay? I'm great, sweetie, I said. Are you ready for school? Yeah. Are you really going to fix it today? Yes, I said. Today is the day. I kissed her forehead and sent her to the bus. I wanted her out of the house before the phone calls started. I sat back down. 8:55 a.m. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Janet. All systems go. Attorneys are on standby. I took a deep breath. I thought about the wine stain on my dress. I thought about the nursery comment to my daughter. I thought about 7 years of lies. 8:59 a.m. I put my finger on the mouse. This is for Kayla, I whispered. 9 a.m. Click. The first transfer initiated. Orion Ventures, $8.5 million, withdrawing. 9:01 a.m. Click. Phoenix Capital, $6.2 million, withdrawing. I watched the progress bars load. Green bars turning into red alerts on the other end. Somewhere across town, in the gleaming glass tower of Apex Dynamics, a red light just started flashing on a server. I kept clicking. One by one. Pulling the rug out. Turning off the lights. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there in the silence of my beautiful home, watching his world crumble, pixel by pixel. And then, at 9:05 a.m., my phone rang. The screen lit up with his face. Husband calling. I let it ring. The game was on. The phone screen lit up with his face. Husband calling. I let it ring. The vibration buzzed against the mahogany desk, a frantic, angry sound in the quiet room. It stopped, then immediately started again. Then a text message popped up. Call me. Urgent. Something is wrong with the bank. I didn't touch it. I just watched it dance across the table. This was the moment I had rehearsed in my mind for weeks, but the reality was far sweeter than the fantasy. In the fantasy, I picked up and screamed at him. In reality, silence was the deadliest weapon I possessed. Silence is what makes people panic. Silence creates a vacuum that the guilty fill with their own terrors. I stood up, leaving the phone on the desk. I had a schedule to keep, and panic was not on my itinerary. Today was about appearances. If anyone asked later, if the lawyers asked, if the press asked, I wasn't sabotaging a company. I was simply a woman taking a personal day.
Meet me at the park bench on 4th and Elm. 7:30 a.m. Come alone. If you don't, I send the IRS file. Robert was a weak man. A numbers man who liked his comfortable salary and his golf club membership. He had seen the embezzlement. He had signed off on the consulting fees for Kylie. He knew. And because he knew and did nothing, he was complicit. I sat on the park bench, clutching my coffee, watching the morning joggers. At 7:28 a.m., Robert appeared. He looked pale, sweating despite the cool morning air. He wore a tracksuit, trying to blend in, but his nervousness radiated off him like heat. Meredith, he said, sitting at the far end of the bench. What is this about? Greg will kill me if he knows I'm talking to you. Greg is a dead man walking, Robert, I said calmly. He just doesn't know it yet. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered. I pulled a manila envelope out of my bag. This is a copy of the whistleblower report I am sending to the SEC at noon today. It details the $400,000 in misappropriated funds over the last year. The apartment, the car, the jewelry, and here, I pointed to a highlighted section, is your signature approving every single expense. Robert turned a shade of green. He made me. He said it was business development. I have a mortgage, Meredith. I have 2 kids in college. I know, I said. And that is why I am giving you a lifeboat. He looked at me, hope warring with fear. What do you mean? I own the company, Robert, I said. What? No, Greg owns 20%, the investors own. I am the investors. I cut him off. Orion, Phoenix, Sterling Trust. It's all me. It's all Holloway money. Robert's mouth fell open. He did the math in his head instantly. My God. 58%. Exactly. And at 9 a.m., I am pulling it all. The company will crash. Greg will be removed. And the SEC will come knocking. Robert put his head in his hands. I'm going to jail. Not necessarily, I said. I need a witness. I need someone to stand up in that board meeting today and confirm that the accounts are empty. I need someone to confirm that Greg ordered these payments over your objection. If you testify against him, if you help me transition the leadership, I will ensure your severance package is protected, and I will speak to the DA about your cooperation. You might lose your license, but you won't lose your freedom. He looked at me, tears in his eyes. He's my friend, Meredith. He's stealing from you too, Robert, I said. He's risking your pension for his mistress. Is that a friend? Robert took a deep breath. He looked at the envelope, then at me. He saw the steel in my eyes. He realized the power had shifted. What do you want me to do? He asked. Go to the meeting, I said. When I walk in, you back me up. When I say the money is gone, you confirm it. And when the board asks for a vote on his removal, you raise your hand first. He nodded slowly. Okay, I'll do it. Good choice, Robert. I left him on the bench and drove back home. Greg was just leaving. He looked dashing in his navy suit, the one I had picked out for him. Hey, he called out as he got into the car. Where were you? I wanted to say goodbye. Wish me luck. Good luck, Greg, I said, standing in the driveway. You're going to need it. See you at the retirement party, he laughed, revving the engine. I watched him drive away. The ignorance was almost tragic. I went inside and went straight to my closet. I pushed past the sensible dresses, the mom clothes. I reached to the back and pulled out the white suit my mother had mentioned. It was sharp, tailored, and immaculate. I put it on. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a tired wife. I looked like a CEO. I checked the time. 8:45 a.m. I went to my office and sat down at the command center. I opened the banking interface. The 14 accounts were lined up like soldiers waiting for orders. Kayla came into the room, holding her new backpack. Mom, are you okay? I'm great, sweetie, I said. Are you ready for school? Yeah. Are you really going to fix it today? Yes, I said. Today is the day. I kissed her forehead and sent her to the bus. I wanted her out of the house before the phone calls started. I sat back down. 8:55 a.m. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Janet. All systems go. Attorneys are on standby. I took a deep breath. I thought about the wine stain on my dress. I thought about the nursery comment to my daughter. I thought about 7 years of lies. 8:59 a.m. I put my finger on the mouse. This is for Kayla, I whispered. 9 a.m. Click. The first transfer initiated. Orion Ventures, $8.5 million. Withdrawing. 9:01 a.m. Click. Phoenix Capital, $6.2 million. Withdrawing. I watched the progress bars load. Green bars turning into red alerts on the other end. Somewhere across town, in the gleaming glass tower of Apex Dynamics, a red light just started flashing on a server. I kept clicking, one by one, pulling the rug out, turning off the lights. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there in the silence of my beautiful home, watching his world crumble, pixel by pixel. And then, at 9:05 a.m., my phone rang. The screen lit up with his face. Husband calling. I let it ring. The game was on. The phone screen lit up with his face. Husband calling. I let it ring. The vibration buzzed against the mahogany desk, a frantic, angry sound in the quiet room. It stopped, then immediately started again. Then a text message popped up. Call me. Urgent. Something is wrong with the bank. I didn't touch it. I just watched it dance across the table. This was the moment I had rehearsed in my mind for weeks, but the reality was far sweeter than the fantasy. In the fantasy, I picked up and screamed at him. In reality, silence was the deadliest weapon I possessed. Silence is what makes people panic. Silence creates a vacuum that the guilty fill with their own terrors. I stood up, leaving the phone on the desk. I had a schedule to keep, and panic was not on my itinerary. Today was about appearances. If anyone asked later, if the lawyers asked, if the press asked, I wasn't sabotaging a company. I was simply a woman taking a personal day.
Breaking news coming out of the tech sector, the announcer's voice was urgent. Trading has been halted for Apex Dynamics, the logistics software unicorn, following a massive, unexplained liquidity crisis. Reports are coming in that nearly 60% of the company's operating capital vanished this morning in a series of coordinated withdrawals. The stock plummeted 40% in pre-market trading before the halt was triggered. Analysts are baffled. CEO Greg Sterling has not issued a statement. I turned up the volume, letting the news report wash over me like a favorite song. Unexplained. Baffled. They didn't know that the explanation was driving a Volvo on I-95, wearing a white suit and a smile. When I pulled into the parking garage of the Apex building, the atmosphere was visibly different. Usually, the garage was quiet, orderly. Today, people were pacing by their cars, on their phones, smoking cigarettes with frantic energy. I saw the VP of sales sitting in his Audi, his head on the steering wheel. I saw a group of junior developers huddled near the elevator, looking like refugees from a disaster zone. They knew. The rumors had already spread. The money is gone. Payroll is frozen. We're bankrupt. I parked in my reserved spot, the one Greg had tried to give to Kylie last week, claiming I didn't use it enough. I saw Kylie's white Porsche parked diagonally across 2 spaces nearby. Typical. Even in a crisis, she was inconsiderate. I walked to the elevator. A young man from IT, David, was waiting there. He looked like he was about to vomit. "Mrs. Sterling," he said, surprised to see me. Have you heard?" "Heard what, David?" I asked, my voice cool and detached. "The accounts," he whispered, looking around as if the walls had ears. "They're empty. Someone wiped us out. The rumor is it's a hack, state-sponsored maybe. China? Russia? Or maybe," I said, pressing the button for the executive floor, "it's just bad management." The elevator doors opened. I stepped in. David hesitated, then stayed behind. He didn't want to go up to the blast zone. The ride up to the 40th floor was smooth, silent. I watched the floor numbers tick up. 10, 20, 30. With every floor, I felt the weight of the last 7 years lifting off my shoulders. I remembered the late nights I spent in this elevator, bringing Greg dinner because he was too busy to eat. I remembered holding his hand in this elevator when the company went public, telling him he deserved it. I remembered crying in this elevator 6 months ago, after the wine incident, wiping mascara off my cheeks before the doors opened to the lobby. Ding. Floor 40. Executive Suites. The doors slid open, and the noise hit me instantly. It wasn't the hum of productivity. It was the roar of panic. People were running. Literally running. Papers were scattered on the floor. Phones were ringing, hundreds of them, a cacophony of ringtones creating a dissonant symphony of disaster. Maria, the receptionist, was fielding calls with a headset, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know, sir. I can't transfer you. Mr. Sterling is in a meeting." "Yes, I understand. Please don't yell at me." She looked up and saw me. Her eyes widened. Maria had been with us since the garage days. She was one of the few who still called me by my first name when Greg wasn't around. "Meredith," she breathed, pulling off her headset. "Thank God. It's the apocalypse. Greg is screaming at everyone. He fired the IT director 10 minutes ago. He threw a stapler at the wall." "Where is he?" I asked. "In the boardroom," she pointed. "With the board. And her. Is the door locked?" "He told me to lock it and not let anyone in," Maria said. "Especially the press." I walked up to the desk. "Maria, give me the master key." She hesitated for a second, looking at the closed double doors of the boardroom, then back at me. She saw something in my face, maybe the resolve, maybe the white suit, maybe the ghost of the woman she used to respect before Greg beat me down. "He's in a bad state, Meredith," she warned, handing me the keycard. "He looks unhinged." "Don't worry, Maria," I said, taking the card. "I'm not here to comfort him." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to finish the meeting," I said. I walked down the long hallway toward the boardroom. The glass walls of the offices on either side revealed the chaos inside. I saw the marketing director packing a box. I saw the HR team shredding documents. I saw the fear in their eyes. And for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. These were good people. They didn't deserve this. But then I remembered, I was saving them. If I didn't do this, Greg would run this company into the ground slowly over the next 2 years. He would bleed it dry to fund his new life with Kylie. He would lay them off one by one to pay for his mistakes. This was a controlled demolition. It was messy, yes. But it was necessary to clear the site for something better. I reached the double doors of the boardroom. They were frosted glass. I could hear voices inside, shouting, "Tell me how $50 million just walks out the door, Robert." That was Greg. He sounded hysterical. "Fix it. Call them back. Tell them it's a mistake." "I can't call them back, Greg." Robert's voice was shaky but louder than usual. "The lines are dead. The contracts are void. They pulled the plug. Then find new money." Greg screamed. "Call Goldman. Call Chase. Get me a bridge loan." "With the stock halted and the SEC investigating?" Another voice. "Wallace, the chairman. Nobody is going to lend us a dime, Greg. We are radioactive." "And what is she doing here?" Greg's voice dropped to a venomous hiss. I live here," Kylie's voice. Small. Whiny. "Greggy, my card got declined at Starbucks downstairs. You need to fix it. This is embarrassing." "Shut up, Kylie," Greg roared. "My company is burning down and you're worried about a latte?" "Don't yell at me," she shrieked back. I stood outside the door, listening. It was perfect. The house of cards had collapsed, and the rats were already eating each other. I adjusted my jacket. I checked my reflection in the glass. White suit. Head high. No wedding ring. I looked at the keycard in my hand. This was it. The point of no return. Once I opened this door, my marriage was officially over. My privacy was gone. I would be the vindictive ex-wife in the tabloids for months.
But I would also be free. I thought of Kayla. I thought of the nursery. I thought of the nothing personal comment. I swiped the card. The light turned green. Click. I pushed the doors open with both hands and stepped into the room. The shouting stopped instantly. 12 heads turned toward me. The board members. Robert, Kylie, and Greg. He was standing at the head of the table, his tie loosened, his hair wild, sweat staining the armpits of his bespoke shirt. He looked like a cornered animal. When he saw me, his face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions. Confusion, relief, then anger. "Meredith," he barked. "What the hell are you doing here? I told you not to come. I'm in the middle of a crisis." I didn't stop walking. I walked straight to the other end of the long mahogany table, directly opposite him. I placed my handbag on the table with a deliberate thud. "I know, Greg," I said, my voice calm, clear, and carrying to every corner of the silent room. "I'm the one who caused it." The silence that followed my statement was absolute. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. You could hear the buzz of a fly hitting the window pane. You could hear the collective intake of breath from 12 highly paid executives who suddenly realized they were in the presence of a predator, not prey. Greg blinked, his brain struggling to process the information. What did you say?" I said. I repeated, articulating every syllable. "I am the one who caused it." "You?" Kylie laughed. It was a nervous, shrill sound that grated on the nerves. She was sitting in the chair that was usually reserved for the CFO, playing with her hair. "Greg, she's delusional. She thinks she crashed the stock market. She probably just unplugged the Wi-Fi router at home." Greg didn't laugh. He was staring at me, his eyes narrowing. He saw the white suit. He saw the way I was standing, feet apart, shoulders back, hands resting on the table. It wasn't the posture of a wife bringing lunch. It was the posture of a hostile takeover. "Meredith," Greg said slowly, his voice dropping to a dangerous octave. "Get out. Now. Before I have security drag you out. You are trespassing." "Actually," I said, pulling a flash drive from my pocket, "I believe I have the floor." I looked at Robert. This was his cue. Robert was sitting 2 seats away from Greg. He was pale, wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. He looked at me, then at Greg. He looked at the life he was about to lose, and the lifeboat I had offered him. He stood up. Robert. Greg snapped.
Sit down.
Call security. No, Greg, Robert said. His voice shook, but he kept going. Let her speak. Excuse me? Greg turned on him, his face purple. I am the CEO of this company, and I am ordering you to. You are the CEO of an insolvent shell, Robert said, gaining strength. As of 9:15 this morning, we have zero operating capital. We are bankrupt. And Mrs. Sterling seems to have an explanation. Thank you, Robert, I said, giving him a curt nod. I walked over to the presentation laptop connected to the main screen. The screen was currently displaying a terrifying graph of the company's liquidity plunging to zero. I plugged in my flash drive. What are you doing? Greg moved toward me. Don't touch that. Sit down, Greg. Wallace, the chairman of the board, shouted. Wallace was a 70-year-old lion of industry who had no patience for hysterics. If she knows where the money went, I want to hear it. Sit down. Greg froze. He looked at Wallace, then at me. He slumped back into his chair, seething. I opened the file named The Truth. A slide appeared on the massive 80-inch screen behind me. It was a simple organizational chart, but instead of departments, it showed money flows. At the top of the chart, in a large box, was the name Holloway Trust. Below it, branching out like the roots of a great tree, were 14 names. Orion Ventures, Phoenix Capital, Sterling Trust, Aurora Holdings, and 10 others. A ripple of murmurs went through the board members. They recognized the names. These were the angels, the investors who had saved the company time and time again. These, I began, using my best boardroom voice, are the 14 institutional investors that fund 58% of Apex Dynamics. You all know them. You have toasted them at galas. You have cited them in your quarterly reports. I clicked the remote. The next slide showed the incorporation documents for Orion Ventures. What you didn't know, I continued, looking directly at Greg, is that every single one of these companies is a shell entity. I clicked again. The signature page of the incorporation document zoomed in. Signed, Meredith Holloway Sterling, trustee. Greg's face went slack. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. It was as if I had just hit him in the chest with a sledgehammer. Phoenix Capital? I clicked. Signed, Meredith Holloway Sterling. Aurora Holdings? I clicked. Signed, Meredith Holloway Sterling. I am Orion, I said, stepping closer to the table. I am Phoenix. I am the angels you brag about to Forbes magazine. Every dollar that built this glass tower came from my family's trust. Every bonus you paid yourself came from my inheritance. Every time you thought you were a genius for closing a deal, you were just convincing your wife to write you another check. Kylie looked at the screen, then at Greg. Greggy, what does that mean? Does she have the money? Shut up, Greg whispered, staring at the screen in horror. This is a lie. It's a forgery. Is it? I asked. Robert, please confirm the wire transfer details for the withdrawal that happened this morning. Where did the money go? Robert looked at his tablet. The funds were recalled to a consolidated account at Holloway Private Banking, Connecticut. Impossible, Greg whispered. He stood up, bracing himself against the table. You tricked me. You lied to me for 7 years. I protected you. I shouted, my voice finally breaking the calm facade. I protected your fragile ego. I knew you couldn't handle being a kept man, so I invented a fantasy world where you were a titan of industry. I let you play king while I paid for the castle. I took a breath, composing myself. But the game is over, Greg. You broke the rules. I clicked the remote again. The screen changed. Gone were the financial charts. In their place appeared the photos from Mr. Vance, Greg and Kylie kissing in the park. The receipt for the penthouse. The receipt for the Porsche. The receipt for the office supplies lingerie. The photo of them leaving the fertility clinic.
The room gasped. Wallace took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. The only female board member, Mrs. Chen, looked at Kylie with undisguised disgust. You didn't just cheat on me, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that echoed in the room. You stole from me. You used my family's money meant for our daughter's future, to buy a penthouse for your mistress. To buy her jewelry. To plan a new family to replace us. I pointed at the screen. That is embezzlement, Greg. That is fraud. And under the terms of the investment agreements, which you signed, any act of malfeasance allows the investor to withdraw all funding immediately. I turned to the board. They were staring at me, stunned. I didn't crash the company, I said. He did. I just took my wallet back. Greg looked around the room. He saw the judgment in their eyes. He saw his allies turning away. He saw the end of his career. He turned to me, and for the first time, I saw true fear in his eyes. Not the fear of losing money, but the fear of total annihilation. Meredith, he said, his voice cracking. Baby. Please. We can talk about this. Not here. Let's go to my office. Please. Don't do this. Don't do what? I asked coldly. Make a business decision? You told me yesterday, Greg. It's nothing personal. It's just business. He flinched as if I had slapped him. Kylie stood up. This is illegal. You can't just show my pictures. That's an invasion of privacy. I'm going to sue you. I slowly turned my head to look at her. I looked at the cheap fear in her eyes, the way her hands shook. Sit down, little girl, I said. The adults are talking. Don't talk to me like that, she screeched. I'm the chief strategy officer. You, I said, walking toward her until I was inches from her face, are a line item in an expense report that I just rejected. You are nothing. I turned back to the board. Gentlemen and Mrs. Chen, I said. You have a choice. The company is currently bankrupt. The stock is frozen. The SEC has been notified of the embezzlement. By Monday, Apex Dynamics will be a carcass picked clean by creditors. I paused, letting the reality sink in. Unless. Wallace looked up. Unless what, Meredith? Unless you accept my offer. What offer? Wallace asked, his voice gruff but laced with desperation. He knew the stakes. His own stock options were currently worth zero. He needed a miracle, and I was the only one in the room holding a wand. I walked back to the head of the table, forcing Greg to step aside. He lingered for a moment, trying to hold his ground, but the sheer force of my presence, and the realization that I owned him, made him shrink. He stepped back, leaning against the window, looking out at the city he used to think he conquered. I placed my hands on the back of the CEO's chair. I didn't sit in it. Not yet. I am prepared to reinvest the full amount, I said. $50 million. Immediately. The liquidity crisis ends today. The payroll gets met. The vendors get paid. The SEC investigation, well, that can be managed if we show decisive corrective action. And the terms? Mrs. Chen asked. 3 terms, I said, holding up 3 fingers. Non-negotiable. Name them, Wallace said. Term 1, I said, pointing a finger at Greg without looking at him. Greg Sterling resigns effective immediately. Not for personal reasons. Not to pursue other opportunities. He resigns admitting to financial mismanagement. He forfeits all unvested stock options and severance to repay the embezzled funds. You can't do that. Greg shouted from the window. I built this company. You can't kick me out. I just did, I said calmly. You built it with my bricks, Greg. And you burned it down with your ego. Term 2, I continued, ignoring his sputtering. I turned my gaze to Kylie. She was sitting frozen, her face pale, looking like a deer in headlights that had just realized the car wasn't stopping. Kylie Vance is terminated immediately. With cause. For knowingly participating in the embezzlement of company funds and engaging in inappropriate conduct with a superior. Kylie stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. You can't fire me. I have a contract. I'm pregnant. The room went dead silent. I felt a sharp kick in my stomach, like I had been punched. Pregnant. So it wasn't just a plan. It was real. The fertility clinic. The nursery comment to Kayla. It was all real. Greg looked up, shock on his face. You are? Yes. Kylie cried, rushing to him and grabbing his arm. Greggy, tell them. We're having a baby. They can't fire a pregnant woman. It's discrimination. For a second, the world swam before my eyes. The pain was blinding. He had given her the one thing he had denied me for years, a second child. He had built a new family on the ruins of ours. But then I thought of Kayla. I thought of my daughter crying in her room. I thought of this woman telling my child she would be replaced. The pain hardened into something colder than ice. It hardened into diamond. Actually, I said, my voice terrifyingly steady. We can. Violation of company policy regarding fraudulent expenses is grounds for immediate termination, regardless of medical status. And frankly, Kylie, if you are pregnant, you might want to save your energy for the legal battles ahead. Because if you sue, I will countersue for the return of every single dollar Greg spent on you. The car, the apartment, the jewelry, the clothes on your back. It's all proceeds of crime. I will leave you with nothing but the diapers. Kylie burst into tears. Ugly, heaving sobs. She buried her face in Greg's shoulder, but Greg didn't hug her back. He was staring at me, realizing that the pregnancy card, his usual trump card of emotional manipulation, had failed. Term 3, I said, turning back to Wallace. I assume the position of chairwoman of the board and interim CEO. I will appoint a new leadership team. I will restructure the financials. And I will restore the Holloway name to the masthead. Wallace looked at the other board members. They exchanged glances. It wasn't a hard decision. On one side, bankruptcy and scandal. On the other, a $50 million lifeline and a competent leader who actually understood the business. We need a vote, Wallace said. All in favor of Mrs. Sterling's proposal? Robert's hand shot up first. He didn't even look at Greg. Then Mrs. Chin. Then the others. One by one. Wallace raised his hand last. The motion carries. Unanimously.
He turned to Greg. Greg, you're out. Security will escort you to your office to collect your personal effects. Do not touch your computer. Do not touch any files. Greg looked at the room. 12 hands raised against him. He looked at me. Meredith, he whispered. How could you? We were partners. No, Greg, I said, walking over to him until I was close enough to smell the fear on him. We were never partners. I was your venture capitalist. And you just failed your audit. I turned to the head of security, who was standing by the door. Please remove Mr. Sterling and Ms. Vance from the premises. Take their badges. And call a tow truck for the Porsche in the garage. It's company property. You're taking the car? Kylie wailed. How am I supposed to get home? Take the bus, I said. It's very eco-friendly. Gen Z loves that, right? Security stepped forward. 2 large men in suits. One took Greg by the elbow. The other gestured to Kylie. Don't touch me, Greg shouted, jerking his arm away. He tried to regain some shred of dignity. He straightened his tie. I'm leaving. But this isn't over, Meredith. You'll hear from my lawyers. I'm sure I will, I said. They can talk to my lawyers. Oh wait, they're the same lawyers. I pay them too. He stared at me, defeated. The realization that I controlled every aspect of his life finally landed. He walked out the door, head down. Kylie followed him, sobbing, clutching her purse like a lifeline. As she passed me, she stopped. Her mascara was running down her face. "You're a monster," she hissed. "You're a jealous old hag." I smiled. It was the genuine smile of a winner. "And you," I said, "are unemployed." I watched them walk down the hallway. The employees were watching from their glass offices. I saw Maria at the reception desk stand up. Slowly, tentatively, Maria started to clap. Then David from IT joined in. Then the marketing director. Soon, the entire floor was clapping. It wasn't a polite golf clap. It was a roar of applause. It was the sound of people who had been terrorized by an incompetent tyrant finally seeing him overthrown. They weren't clapping for me, necessarily. They were clapping for justice. But as I stood there in the doorway of the boardroom, listening to the applause, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt seen. I turned back to the board. They were waiting for me. The screen still showed the chart of the Holloway Trust. "Gentlemen, Mrs. Chen," I said, walking to the head of the table and finally sitting in the CEO's chair. It was comfortable. It fit perfectly. Let's get to work. The rest of the day was a blur of triumphant efficiency. I signed the transfer orders refunding the accounts. I issued a press release stating that internal restructuring has been successfully completed. I held an all-hands meeting where I assured the staff that their jobs were safe and that the toxic culture of the past year was over. But the most satisfying moment, the moment that is seared into my memory forever, happened right after the board meeting. I was sitting in Greg's office, my office now. I was watching security pack his things into a cardboard box. His world's best boss mug. His framed photo of himself with Elon Musk, which I knew was photoshopped. I walked over to the window and looked down at the street. I saw them, Greg and Kylie, standing on the sidewalk. Greg was holding the box. He looked small from 40 floors up. He was arguing with Kylie. She was waving her arms, screaming at him. She tried to hail a taxi, but it drove past. She shoved Greg. He shoved her back. The love of the century was disintegrating on the pavement before the ink on the termination papers was even dry. I pulled out my phone and zoomed in on the camera. I took a picture. It was a masterpiece. The king and his mistress, dethroned, standing amidst the cigarette butts and trash of the city sidewalk. I looked at that photo and I realized something profound. I hadn't just taken back my money. I had taken back my narrative. For 7 years, I had let him tell the story of us. Greg the genius, Meredith the supportive wife. Now I held the pen. If you're listening to this and you have ever felt silenced, if you have ever let someone else write your story because you were too afraid to pick up the pen, I want you to do something for me right now. Look at where you are. Look at what you have built. And realize that nobody has the right to take it from you. If you are still here with me, witnessing this moment of absolute justice, please hit that like button and comment the number 1 below. Let me know that you are standing with me. Let me know that you are part of the army of women who refuse to be erased. Your 1 tells me that you get it, that you feel this victory as if it were your own. Please comment 1 right now so I can see you. And now, let me tell you what happened when he tried to come home that night. Because if you think the boardroom was brutal, wait until you see the living room. I left the office at 6 p.m. I didn't stay late. I had a date with my daughter. When I pulled into the driveway of our estate, I saw a locksmith van pulling out. I waved at the driver. He gave me a thumbs up. I walked inside. The house felt different. Lighter. The air was cleaner. Mom, Kayla ran down the stairs. She was wearing her new leather jacket, even though we were inside. Is it true? Is he really gone? For now, I said, hugging her. How did you know? It's on TikTok, she said, showing me her phone. Someone filmed him getting kicked out of the building. It has like 1 million views. Everyone at school is talking about it. They say you're a savage. I laughed. Is that good? It's legendary, she grinned. Good. Go wash up for dinner. We're ordering pizza. Extra cheese. At 8 p.m., the doorbell rang. Not the key. The doorbell. Because his key didn't work anymore. I walked to the door. I checked the camera. It was Greg. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 hours. His tie was gone. His shirt was unbuttoned. He was holding a bottle of wine, cheap wine, probably from a gas station.
I opened the door, but I left the security chain on. Meredith, he breathed, seeing me. Thank God. Let me in. It's cold. You're not coming in, Greg, I said through the crack. Baby, please, he said, putting his hand on the door. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. Kylie, she means nothing to me. She was just a distraction. I was stressed. I was weak. But today, seeing you in that boardroom, it reminded me of who you really are. You're the only woman for me. You're brilliant. You're ruthless. I love that about you. I listened to his speech. It was pathetic. He wasn't attracted to me, he was attracted to the power I had just displayed. He was a moth attracted to the flame that had just burned him. Where is Kylie? I asked. I sent her away, he said quickly. I told her it's over. I told her I love my wife. Please, Meredith. Think of Kayla. She needs her father. She needs a father, I agreed. Not a roommate who ignores her to text his girlfriend. I can change, he pleaded. I'll go to therapy. I'll sign a postnup. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't throw away 18 years. I'm not throwing them away, I said. I'm archiving them. Under lessons learned. I reached into my pocket and pulled out an envelope. I slid it through the crack in the door. What is this? He asked, taking it. It's a printout of the Zillow listing for the house in the Hamptons, I said. The one you were looking at with Kylie. The one with the nursery. He froze. And stapled to the back, I continued, is a copy of the forensic accounting report showing you used the company's emergency fund for the down payment. Meredith. I spoke to the DA an hour ago, Greg. He's very interested in the case. But I told him I might be willing to drop the criminal charges if you agree to an uncontested divorce. You sign everything over. The house, the custody, the remaining shares. You walk away with nothing but your clothes and your freedom. He looked at the papers, then at me. He knew I wasn't bluffing. He knew that if he fought me, I would put him in prison. You would put the father of your child in jail? To protect the child? I said. In a heartbeat. He slumped against the doorframe. The fight went out of him. He looked down at his shoes. I have nowhere to go, he whispered. Kylie kicked me out of the penthouse when the credit cards got declined. I hear your mother has a spare room in Ohio, I said. You always said you wanted to visit her more. Ohio, he looked horrified. Goodbye, Greg, I said. I started to close the door. Meredith, he shouted, jamming his foot in the crack. Wait! Just tell me one thing. Did you plan this? Did you plan this whole thing from the beginning? I looked at him one last time. No, Greg, I said. I plan to grow old with you. I plan to sit on this porch and watch our grandchildren play. You planned this. I just finished it. I kicked his foot out of the way and slammed the door. I locked the deadbolt. Click. I turned around and leaned against the door, listening to his footsteps retreat down the driveway. I slid down to the floor and finally, for the first time that day, I let out a breath that shook my whole body. I wasn't crying. I was laughing. A quiet, shaking laugh of relief. Kayla came into the hall, holding a slice of pizza. Is he gone? She asked. Yeah, baby, I said, standing up and smoothing my white suit. He's gone. Good, she said. Because the pizza is getting cold. And Fortune is hungry. Fortune? The puppy, she smiled. We got a puppy, remember? You promised. Right, I smiled. Fortune. I like that name. 3 months later, I sat in the CEO's office at Apex Dynamics. The world's best boss mug was gone, replaced by a vase of fresh hydrangeas. The company was thriving. The stock had doubled since I took over. The market loved the Holloway turnaround story. They called me the Iron Heiress. I didn't mind the nickname. I opened the drawer of my desk. Inside was a stack of letters. Greg wrote once a week. They were sent from Ohio. He was working at a car dealership. He wrote about how much he missed us, how sorry he was, how hard life was without the Holloway cushion. I never read past the first line. I kept them as evidence, just in case he ever tried to come back. Kylie had disappeared from social media after the scandal. Rumor had it she was trying to become a reality TV star, pitching a show about surviving a toxic billionaire. I wished her luck. She would need it. I looked at the photo on my desk. It was taken last week. Me, Kayla, and my mother Beatrice standing on the lawn of the estate with Fortune, our golden retriever. We looked strong. We looked happy. We looked like a fortress that could not be breached. I realized then that my mother was right about the money, but she was wrong about one thing. She said money buys protection. It doesn't. Money buys options. But courage buys protection. I had used the money as a weapon, yes. But the real victory wasn't the bank transfer. The real victory was the moment I decided I was worth more than being a silent partner in my own life. I turned to the camera, to you, my friends who have listened to this whole saga. If you are sitting in the shadows of someone else's ego, step into the light. Check the books. Audit your life. And if you find that you are investing more than you are getting back, don't be afraid to click withdraw. Because the only thing you have to lose is the weight of a man who never deserved you in the first place. This is Meredith Holloway, signing off. And remember, fortune favors the bold. And so, as the dust settles and the echoes of triumph fade into quiet reflection, we are left with a story that transcends mere revenge. It is a testament to resilience, self-worth, and the power of reclaiming one's voice. Meredith's journey reminds us that silence in the face of betrayal is not weakness, it is often the calm before the storm of transformation. She taught us that valuing ourselves is not selfish, but essential, and that courage is the true currency of change. Through her unwavering determination, Meredith showed us that adversity is not the end, it is the beginning of clarity. It is the moment we recognize our worth, take control, and set boundaries that protect our dignity and the people we love. Her story is a call for all of us to audit our lives, to question what we are investing in, and to ensure that the returns align with our values and dreams. What resonates most deeply is her ability to rise above the chaos, not just for herself, but for her daughter and her future. Meredith's victory wasn't just financial, it was emotional, moral, and deeply human. It is proof that no matter how dark the night may seem, there is always light waiting for those brave enough to seek it. Now, it's your turn. What did this story teach you about your own strength? Share your thoughts below or simply comment good if this lesson inspired you. Let's continue the conversation and celebrate the boldness that lies within us all.